YouTubers, and welcome to another Throwback Thursday review. In today's review, we're going back further than ever, back to 2006, just as the action figure line was kicking off, and this was one of the earliest figures released, the Sycorax Leader from the Christmas Invasion, which at the time was very recent. We just had a new Doctor, we were straight into the new year, and we had our first line of action figures. So the figure came on a standard blister card. As you can see, there was no series box at this point. All the figures were just in a standard wave. And the TARDIS background simply was the TARDIS with a few effects added. And again, we also have our little name card at the front featuring an image of the Sycorax Leader and also telling us what accessories the figure comes with. And then on the back of the card, we also get to have a look at some of the other figures that were available at the time. So we have the 10th Doctor in his long coat, Rose and K9, the Doctor Regeneration set, which I believe was only exclusive to Argos. We have the mini remote control Dalek, Cassandra with 3 robot spiders, Slovene, the Mox of Bolhoon, Mox features pullback and go motion, how exciting, and the Sycorax Leader. So when this guy came out, it was an incredibly exciting time to be a Doctor Who fan, because the last time we actually had proper action figures was Dapol, and we all know that they weren't that great. But here we were getting brand new figures. I can remember when the first images of these figures came out, it was quite early in 2006, if I remember rightly. And I remember the website, it was either something like 10thplanet.co.uk or Galaxy 4, or both of those. Those were the websites that we used to check, me and my brother, all the time for new Doctor Who merchandise, whether it be sort of like stuff from, or the Who Shop, that was another one. And we would always look for stuff like Product Enterprise things, 12-inch Tom Baker, will it ever get made? No, it never. Then, of course, the new series came out, and there were rumours going around that, oh yeah, there's possibly going to be an action figure line and TARDIS playset and all this kind of thing. And we'd see all these items get listed, and we think, well, what's that? Or there'd be no picture. And then I remember one day my brother shouting down, I was downstairs and he was upstairs, and he shouted down and said, "Matt, there's pictures of the new Doctor Who toys." I rushed up the stairs and I was like, my God, that David Tennant actually looks like David Tennant, it's not like Dapol, and the Sycorax Leader looks amazing. So it was a very exciting time. Now that I've gotten the nostalgia out of the way, let's take a look at the articulation for this guy. So starting off at the head, his head can turn left and right. You can't really do 360 degrees because he has this very large neck piece, almost like a ruff, at the back of his cape. He has standard articulation at the arms that swivel up and down at the shoulders. Wow, you can listen to that. This is a figure that has not been touched in a long time. Very squeaky. I did play with this toy though. I'm surprised the joints, well, I guess I didn't really play with it that much. This was sort of at the end of me playing with toys. I remember they just sort of came out when playing with toys wasn't something that I really did anymore. It started to fade out at that point, and then I started making videos instead. So you also have articulation at the elbows, so they pivot back and forth. There is, of course, articulation at the waist, which could do a 360-degree turn. He does have articulation at the hips. Unfortunately, you can't really see it that well because he has this big cloak and skirt piece. And he also has articulation at the knees. Again, they just go back and forth. And again, you can't really see it on camera because of all the robes. However, although the articulation is quite basic, the detail is actually very impressive on this guy, and I remember being incredibly impressed when I first got the figure, because it was unlike anything we'd ever really seen before with Doctor Who toys. Like I said, we were just sort of brought up on Dapol, which were pretty shite. So let's take a look at some of the details here. First off, we've got that really cool head sculpt. The bone helmet looks amazing. Very well done. You've got that cream bone-like colour, which has then got a dark wash over the top to really accent all of the nooks and crannies of the nose and the sockets around the eyes. It's really superb. Then we have the face underneath the mask. The eyes, here they're quite simple, and I can understand why, because it must have been quite difficult to get into those little gaps. It really is just 2 black dots and then some sort of like orange around the outside to make it look like the irises around the pupils. There's no white or anything, which is a shame. That is the only flaw, I think, of this figure, is that the eyes look a bit dodgy. And I think on mine, one looks slightly higher than the other. And then we have the mouth, and you can see all the muscles around the cheeks. They've added a sort of a grey wash, quite streaky, to give it that same line-like texture like you see in the episode itself, and the very small teeth. And you can also see the tongue has been painted as well. Very impressive. I absolutely love this. And you can also see here the sculpt for the rough collar piece of his cloak. Very impressive again. Very fine sculpt, lots of little details. You can see all the textures. It looks almost sort of feathery, and that's been painted in a sort of dark brown colour. If we move down again, the sculpt for the cloak has sort of been sculpted so it's in a kind of a blowing type effect. It doesn't hang like if it was naturally hanging. They've made it in some sort of action pose, something that they didn't really go for later on. Not sure why they did this. Perhaps it was for more ease of access for the arms, so he could actually hold his accessories. I guess if the cloak was hanging more naturally, it would have covered it over. Who knows? And that's just all sculpted in a solid red plastic. There's no paint wash or anything to make it look a bit more detailed. And that's probably the only bit of the figure that maybe could have used a bit more paint application, but otherwise, I don't think it really is necessary. There's some nice sculpt work there with the creases of the way you can see the fabric hanging down. The collar continues round to the front in that same dark brownish colour, and then you have all these extra details. You have all of the little bones hanging off, and again this features the same sort of paint applications as the helmet, that cream with the darker brown wash over the top, and there's all sorts of little things like little beads, little bits of string and rope or whatever. Very impressive. Really nice paintwork there. Again, the torso itself is just a solid red, is just like a solid red plastic, and the paint has just been applied to that on the bones and things. So again, it probably could have used a little added extra there, but for the most part, it really doesn't detract from the figure at all. The arms also have this very nice sculpt texture to it. I'm not quite sure what it's meant to be. It's sort of like a weave texture. It's quite interesting. And that's been painted red. And then you have this dark wash over the top that really brings out the depth to the sculpt. The hands continue similarly to the face. You have all the pink with the white streaks over the top. Again, very nicely sculpted. You can see all of the knuckles and the bone structure that has been sculpted on. Very impressive for such an early figure. Moving down slightly, you have this sort of underskirt piece, which, as you can see, that is in a slightly different sculpted texture. Again, it's got more of a sort of a weave texture. Again, it is just sculpted in a solid red, but with the added texture, it doesn't really need that additional detail so much as the other parts of the figure. And then if we look down at the shoes, as you can see, there's a really nice sculpt of how the trousers fall over the shoes. You can see all the nice folds and creases, which have been very well sculpted. And then if we look at the shoes themselves, they've got these sort of armour-plated pieces over the top, and that has been painted in a very dark gunmetal silver. Now the figure comes with 2 different accessories. The first is the whip. This has been sculpted so that it's sort of mid-motion. And it's quite a solid piece. You can bend it, as you can see, but you would never be able to straighten it out or anything. It is meant to hang like that. Again, the details, for the most part, it is just sculpted in a solid brown, but they have added additional details. You've got some nice detail on the handle part of the whip. So again, more of this bone-like structure, which, is all part of the Sycorax design. And you also have that sort of bit of fur, like a tail or whatever, hanging on the end, which is red with that same dark wash that we've seen on the arms. He also comes with his staff that you see him with. Again, very nice sculpt, some really interesting stuff here. Very intricate details. You can see all of the sort of leather cladding, the texture of the wood, the little stumps, all the little metal pieces, like the little silver studs, all of which have been painted, which is very impressive. And again, more of this bone motif and even bits of beads that actually are slightly separate from the main sculpt. It actually hangs off. Very impressive. Very, very impressive. So for one of the very early figures in the line, this is an absolutely fantastic figure. and I remember loving it when I first got the toy. I was always disappointed that it didn't come with a sword, because it would have been nice to have had him sword fight with the 10th Doctor. But I do remember not seeing this guy around for very long. Now, I can't remember for the life of me where I got this. This was a figure that became much sought after. I believe the prices for this guy used to soar on eBay. Now, of course, there is the Sycorax Warrior that didn't come out for many years. I don't know, was it 2008? Maybe 2009. And I'm not going to review him today, but I will review him at a later date, and then we shall compare and contrast the two figures and see how well they fit together. So thank you for watching this review, guys. Please leave your suggestions for next time's figure. Maybe I'll do something else. Maybe I'll do a Doctor. Maybe I'll do a companion rather than a monster. We've had 3 monsters now. So yes, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time for another Throwback Thursday review.